Welcome back to Post Projects and Project 818 SRX. Today I'm going to start assembling the motor. Before I get into that, just a disclaimer, this is my first time building a rotary. This will not be a step-by-step, and by no means should you be watching this video and then building a rotary. There are some good step-by-step videos on YouTube. There's also, you can purchase some DVDs from some rotary shops. Combine that with the factory service manual, and most people could probably build one if they wanted to. There are little things that you can mess up and you can slip up and you'll probably make mistakes. So for a lot of people, it might be worth it to just pay a professional to do it. For me, I've done everything else on this car myself. I just want to do this. In the end, it might cost me more because I might mess something up and have to pull the engine again. I really hope not. But it is what it is. If you're considering building a rotary yourself, I challenge you to watch some rebuild videos. If you can't watch an hour-long video of someone tediously filing side seals and checking and filing and checking, and you keep skipping forward because this is boring, like most people probably do with my videos, then maybe it's not for you. It is tedious and it's time consuming and it's not something you can rush. I actually watched a video. If you look up Blake Martinez, there's a series of 4 videos. It's probably about 2.5 hours worth of footage, which is just great step by step. They even give you the specs. I still recommend checking the factory service manual, but they were bang on to that video. And he uses a grinding stone like this with a little bit of oil, dab dab, grind grind, and it seems painful. And I think he does one seal and it's like 10-15 minutes, and it's pretty boring to watch. And then I watched other videos like Rob Dahm, and I've seen some other people do this as well, where they take the corner of an old rotor, put a bit in the end like from a drill press, and then they've got something you slide your corner seal into it, and you can grind it down a lot faster. I of course thought, well, I mean, I've got an old rotor, I can make this jig, so I did. I made it, and sure enough, my first seal I fucked up, and I didn't order extra seals. So that would be great. If you want to do that method, I would suggest getting some extra side seals, but if you're not getting paid by the hour, or if you're not charging by the hour like a shop where they can, time is money, just get a stone and take your time to do it, because it's until you start doing it. Again, I wanted to do the first rotor before I filmed this one because it's just the slightest between your tolerances are 20 thou to 60 thou, basically thousandths of an inch, and it doesn't take much to go from the 20 thou doesn't fit, and so it's probably like 15 thou to all of a sudden you're at 30 thou or 40 thou, and you're like, oh, it's good, because again, the consensus on the internet is all over the place. I was aiming for that 20 thou. I don't think I got any of them at the 20 thou. I think the majority of them on that one are between 25 thou and 30 thou, and I'm sure this one will be the same. Again, well within spec and on the tighter side of tolerance, or tighter side of the spec. However, some people, if you read on the forums, they'll try to go even tighter than that. You get into issues of the side seal getting gouged, or the corner seal getting gouged by the side seal. If your clearances are too tight, keep in mind that all of this expands, and at different rates. I mean, it's quite possible. I'd imagine the seals expand more than, say, the rotor does under heat. So these tolerances tighten up. I find the side seals are quite handy for all kinds of things. For cleaning out the side seal grooves, for aligning the corner sealed springs. So what I did is I took one of my old side seals and I just put a piece of tape on it, so that it was always easy to find, and I wasn't mistaking it with the new ones. I also have some old ones here. I did have to use one old one on the front rotor because unfortunately I did mess up this new one. I also, if the because these were clearanced, I'm finding that this gap is just a little bit tighter than it probably should be. So I've just been kind of putting a little tension on this and just kind of scouring it, and it's taking that little bit of burr that might be left in there from machining. So these are all cleaned from when they were at the machine shop, but you want to make sure that there's nothing in those grooves. So again, a side seal is great for that. And again, I'm just making sure if it's tight anywhere to just run it by a few times, and it helps open that slot up. Because I did find when I did wreck that one, the gap was too much, but I also tweaked it. I bent it because it got stuck in there and I was too aggressive pulling it out. Again, anyone who builds rotaries, GoPro, probably... Why the fuck did you stop? There's all these little things that if you build rotaries, then you know. Well, if you build rotors, you're probably not watching this video. But fuck off. Woo-ha! Those little things like fucking up a side seal, I don't actually know what a side seal costs. I bought the whole kit, but I would suggest getting a few extras if you're replacing your side seals. I certainly can't imagine they cost too much, and it would have been nice to not have to reuse an old one. However, I was still able to measure it, and the old one was within spec. That's probably one of my tighter ones. That one's probably right at 20 thou. So once you're happy with all those grooves being opened up, you can install your little springs for the corner seals. And again, here's where your side seal comes in handy. Guys use a pick too. I mean, I just found this to be really handy for multiple things. Instead of having a little pick screwdriver and a few other tools, I'm basically just using a side seal for everything. Okay. Now there are two sides to a side seal, and it's kind of not the easiest to tell the difference, but one side is a little duller than the other, and the shiny side goes up. At this stage, you want to misalign your apex seal slot so that you can get your side seal out. You also want to make sure that it goes in, it springs up and down on the spring, and isn't giving you any resistance. Sometimes it's really hard to tell which end is the shiny. It's not as definitive as I thought it would be based off of the videos I watched. Side seal springs, the tips go up, and that's pretty much all you need to know. So we'll put those in now. This will pretty much all be coming out here at some point. Okay, now on to the fun bit. So in the factory service manual and also in the videos, they show there's one finished end and one not finished end on the apex seals. However, both of mine have the angle on it that you would want that would line up to the corner seal. However, one is shiny and one isn't. So I just took it as far as, I'm guessing the one that isn't shiny is where I'll file, and then I just always file that one end. Now, they do come oversized, but not by a lot. I'll see if I can get a good view of this. So you can see it won't go down because it just rests on there. However, each time you want to still test fit and get an idea. And basically what you're going to do now is start filing. Now, let's see, there we go. A little oil on the stone. And you got to try to hold the angle that it's on so that it meets up with the corner seal right, and grind away. And this is tedious. Now I'm going to film this whole thing and I'll probably time lapse it, but it's just prepare to spend some time. And this is where you're going to make or break your motor as far as compression, is these seals being good and accurate. And I just deburr it on the fine side a little bit. And then I like to always have a shop towel. Because this is already clean, and I don't want to clean it again, so if I just give that a wipe each time, well, I don't need to clean it again. So then you just try to install your spring, and well, still needs some more. And it looks like I didn't take anything off, but I did. It's so hard to gauge how much you're taking off. You also want to make sure that you're keeping it square. Mine's just a little tapered there. So again, very tedious. That's a couple times now I thought it was going to fit in next and it didn't. So file a little more, deburr, clean it off, check again. And then as soon as you get it fitting in there, that's when you got to start checking for tightness and your clearances with your feeler gauges. Now I've got it in there, but it's tight. So normally what you're looking for is you push down on the sides, and if you push in the middle, the sides come up, and it does it because it just fit in there. I can get it to come up if you get it stuck in there like that by just pushing on the corner seals, or just, yes, the corner seals, and then you want to very easily work that up. And you want to pull it up as even as possible so you don't bend it. But we're close. And we're too tight again. Okay, now it's in there a little easier. So if I push down on the sides, they stay down. If I push in the middle, they come up. So that's telling me that we're close. It's not telling me any numbers, and some guys, you know, would make you believe that they get the feel for it and that's close enough for them. I don't believe that you can get the feel for it and be within that tight a tolerance, but to each their own. Some guys have great success. Okay, so I'm going to start with 15 thou, see if I can get that in there. Well, I can't get it in there, so I'll take it back out and file a little bit more. Again, we're looking for at least 20 thou gap. Still can't get the feeler gauge in there. Again, once you get close, it's better to do this 10 times. The experts will know pretty much, you know, they'll be a lot closer. They'll have an idea how much grinding to do to get how much off, but still needs a little bit. So I'm just trying to get it all the way to one side. All right. Now I have the feeler gauge fits in there. Let's see if I can get that on camera. So it fits in there. So that's the 15. Now I'll see if I can get the 20 in there. 20 thou right here. And 20 thou is in there. So I went from just a couple of strokes on the block. I couldn't fit the 15. Now I can fit the 20 thou. Well, let's try 25 thou. Oh, yep, 25 thou is in there. Now let's try 30 thou. See how quickly it changes. No, I can't get the 25 thou. I can't get the 30 thou in. Oh, I just did. Real tight. So, just like that. You know, so if you're one of those guys that's, oh, I'm gonna try to get it at 20 thou, bang on. You're gonna have to do a quick file, like half as much as I was doing, because I just went from a 15 thou wouldn't fit to now we're at 30 thou, which is fine. It's still within spec. Like we can go up to 60 thou, and some would argue on a turbo motor you want even a little bit more clearance. Naturally aspirated, you'd want it to be really tight. So I'm perfectly happy with that. Now I've got two more to do, and I'm just going to go ahead and do those off camera because it's the exact copy of what I just did, and then we'll jump into the next step.
1 hour later.
So now I've got all three of these side seals fit. They're all between 25 and 30 thou. So I'm going to take those out, and you just kind of do that carefully. Make sure they come out easily and they're not binding. And just sticking them to the side. You want to make sure that you don't mix them up, so you want to just take them out and put them right where you had them, because they're now custom fit to each side. And then we can take out the corner seals. Now because they're misaligned, I can take a apex seal, slide it in there, and just push that up. Now, because I know that it's already cleaned and I'm just cleaning the seal each time, I don't need to scrape inside there. So we're going to leave the springs in. And now it's time for the old rubber gloves and Vaseline. Now you could just do the old dip your finger and spread it in and try to get it into the grooves, like most of the guys do in the video. You can also use a syringe, which is what I'm opting for. And all I'm doing is holding it flat. Try to get it going here. Holding it flat and squeezing it, and then just going along. And what it's doing is it's pushing Vaseline into that groove. And the whole point of this is just to keep everything assembled and to kind of pre-lube for startup. If it was just pre-lube, you just use assembly lube for everything. But we also, there's so many little springs and seals that we don't want any of it falling out during assembly. So the Vaseline kind of helps with that. And there's no real concern of using too much. It's just going to ooze out and you can wipe off excess. So then just being careful to make sure that you put the corner seals in right. We can now line them up with the apex seal slot because they're going in for good now. It's also easy to align those with an apex seal once you got them in. Let's take an apex seal and make sure that they're all lined up and the spring is in the right way. And now we can put in the side seals. They're not going to spring up as well now because there's all kinds of, they'll still spring, but not the same because there's so much Vaseline put in there now. And it's just oozing out the Vaseline as I put it in there. Okay, now we just have the oil control rings. So I am reusing my rings and using new O-rings. So just a little Vaseline on the O-rings. Just like that. And then the outer one is a little trickier to fit, but I wouldn't call it. Oh, that's not the right one. That's for the other side. There we go. The larger one, just a little trickier because it doesn't fit on the outside, so you're not pulling it tight rather than actually just trying to tuck it in. Patience is a virtue. And there we go. Okay, now we've got our springs. So it's important that before you start, you identify which is the front and which is the rear. Now they did that when they balanced it, so I know this is my rear rotor. So the gears on the rear rotor are facing the rear of the engine. The gears on the front rotor are facing the front. So we want the blue springs face the rear of the motor. So again, on the front rotor, it's the white springs next to the gears. On the rear rotor, it's the blue next to the gears, because it's all about the rotation. So we got the blue painted springs, and we're just going to line it up with the slot, or with the little dimple hole. There's an inner and an outer. So there it is. And this is where my little side seal with the tape on it comes in handy. That's just my little tool for making sure I place those properly. Okay, now we put these on. So there is a little flat spot, or a little notch I should say, well actually there's two, that has to line up with the raised edge of that seal, or that spring. So like that. That's that one in. And then again, looking for that little notch, and line it up. All right. So I'm just going to take a little extra Vaseline just to kind of help everything stay in. We'll be changing the oil. I keep saying we. But I'll be changing the oil pretty soon after the first startup. Just let it idle for a little while, and then I'll end up changing the oil pretty quick. And all this Vaseline, whatever doesn't burn off, will get mixed in the oil, and then will get changed out. There'll be some frequent oil changes in the first couple of 1,000 kilometers anyway. Something like that. So now it's just a matter of repeating that. Okay, nothing fell out. Sweet. Repeating that on the other side. And then I'll be done the rotors. All set to assemble the motor. The rotors are all prepped. Just a clarification, it wasn't 20 thou, it was 2 thou. So all of my side seal clearances are 2 to 3 thou, in some cases 2.5 thou. That was just my mistake. I am going to film this more of a time-lapse style and just plow through it and not do the step-by-step. However, I do want to touch on a few things I'm going to be using. So I'm going to be using Vaseline petroleum jelly like I used on the rotors. I'm going to be using that for all of the coolant seals, just as to help them stay in place. This comes in handy for that, for the coolant seals. I'm also going to be using some assembly lube. There's all kinds of different type. This is royal purple. I'm also going to be using Hylamar, which is not a substitute for silicone. They each have their place, and understanding that more will help you know when to use it. So there's no golden rule you have to use Hylamar. It is popular with rotary builds. It's designed for machine surfaces that fit together at a tight tolerance. So, and it stays tacky. It never solidifies like a silicone. It isn't going to get absorbed into your oil. It's not going to be affected by your oil or your coolant, or it just kind of just stays there, and 10 years from now when you open up the motor, it'll still be blue and still be tacky. There's some spots that it's perfect to use and some spots it's not. I'm going to use a little bit of it right here where the oil pump mounts to the front cover. I'm going to use a little bit of it right here where the metal gasket sandwiches between the front cover and the front iron, because this is your main out for oil that goes to your oil cooler. Since I'm talking about that, traditionally builders will often use a Teflon backing washer in here. It just fits in that groove perfectly, and then a rubber O-ring and a paper gasket either doesn't go there at all, or it's a metal gasket that has a ring that just sits around the outside. If, however, you use the newer style, which they started using on FDs in Japan in '96, so this engine came with one of these style, because this is a Series 7, so 96 and newer, or 96 and 98, I believe. And I believe the RX-8s also use this one now. This may or may not fit an RX-8, I'm not sure exactly, but it is the right one for this. So it actually has a raised ring around here. That's a one-time use only. It crushes, so it sandwiches between the two machine surfaces, and that's it. That's your sealing surface. That's what they went to from using the Teflon and the O-ring for, I'm guessing, 20-30 years. They went to this, and then they stuck with it into the RX-8. And yeah, you do not use both. If you have this style gasket, you don't use that. If you don't have this style gasket, then you use those. I also quickly went through and just kind of made sure that I knew what each seal was for, and I knew what I had. There's a bunch of seals that come with it that I'm not even thinking of. I'm like, I don't know what these are for, but like these two they're for the oil pedestal, right? But I have new ones that match my Racing Beat oil pedestal. So you're gonna probably have extra O-rings, but you want to make sure that you have everything laid out. Back to the squirrel. Back to the Hylamar. I'm also going to use that on my O-rings for the dowels. I'm going to use it on the legs where the irons meet the plates that are often siliconed. They are a tight machined fit, and I feel like that's the perfect place for Hylamar. On silicone it works, but I think the Hylamar is better for that application. However, the Hylamar for the bottom on an oil pan that's stamped steel and flexes wouldn't work. So it's all about knowing when to use it. Another spot is the FD rear stationary gear has a groove in here for this O-ring to seal it on the back. You don't need it on the front because the front is all oil anyway, so if there was any leakage there it wouldn't matter, but on the back it would just be getting all over your clutch. So I don't need this because the RX-8 doesn't use an O-ring there, which means in order to get it to seal we need to use some silicone, or I'm going to use Hylamar, because again it is a tight fit. You literally got to tap it into place with a rubber mallet, so Hylamar is perfect for that. It's going to be torqued down, it's not going to flex, it's not going to move. It'll be sealed up good. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So basically I'll mount my front stationary gear, flip this over, then it's rotor, housing, E-shaft, plate, rotor, housing, plate, bolts, and just kind of sandwiches all together. Sweet. So that's it. That's my rotary rebuild. Still lots left to do, obviously, but I'm sure this is already a record for video length. So I'm going to cut it off here, and I'll wrap up the engine and show the few little changes I'm doing externally on the motor in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you picked up on anything in that video that I did wrong, by all means comment, and there might still be some time to save me. It's spinning freely, got nice pulses. I'm quite optimistic. I did notice little things. If anyone was watching the transmission video way back a couple of years ago, and I was having an issue hitting my flywheel nuts, or my flywheel bolts. The heads of them were actually hitting on that clutch, and there's that video bad throwout bearing that I was wondering what it was, and it was actually the clutch hitting those nuts. So I took the washers off of those and just ran the lock washers. And I noticed on assembly, I was just looking through the inspection port, and I could see these bolts were too long. They might have been okay before with the washers on, but now they were protruding through and actually hitting the rear stationary gear when I pulled it all the way. So it probably, as it was assembled before, probably had zero backlash. It was probably tight. I wish I still had my stationary gear, my rear stationary gear, but I left that at the shop in Calgary. It was probably clearance from the bolts. Although the bolts seemed fine, so I'm just a little curious by that. Maybe the RX-8 stationary gear is slightly different there, and it wasn't an issue on the FD gear, but regardless, I had to cut, probably 5 mil off those bolts and just rethread them so that they clearanced. Yeah, I'm at I guess 2 thou. The tolerance for end play is 0.0016 to 0.0027, and I'm right at 0.002. So that's awesome. The rotating assembly is balanced. My end play is bang on. I feel like it's down to my tuning now. Hopefully this holds together. But so fingers crossed, knock on wood. Let's hope that everything I did here was correct. Let's hope that it works out for me. I'm going to continue to assemble the long block, I guess, bolt on everything I could and still fit it in. And then I've got a few other mods to do while I have the engine out, the flat bottom and whatnot. But this was a huge milestone, and I'm really happy to have the engine assembled. So as always, thanks for watching. If you watched this far in the video, really appreciate it. This was big for me. Until next time, peace.